Very good. Oh, there you are. You disappeared there for a second. Now you're back.
We good? Can you see my sweet dry fire targets in the back?
I can.
Okay,
Yep.
good.
All right. Welcome to the fourth, I think, episode of Train Smart Podcast with Velox Training Group. I'm Nick Young, the host, and I am also the lead instructor for Velox Training Group. Today I've got Tyler. I'm not even going to try to pronounce your last name. I'll let you say it here in a second. But Tyler, I first met Tyler because he was a class host of mine, and he hosted me up in Granby, Massachusetts. Since then, we've kind of chatted back and forth, texted about stuff, DM'd about stuff, about training specifically. And I was like, you know what? I like what this guy has to say, and I think this would make for a good podcast. Just being honest, I think some of the things that I liked the most about you was like you would ask me something and then I would tell you and you're like, you wouldn't take it right off the bat. You were like, all right, I'll go check it out. Or like, I don't know if I believe that yet. Like I need to look at it in my own training and stuff. That to me, like that was super cool because that tells me that you train a lot. And I know that you train a lot just based off of that. What I see you doing, like we've chatted about, rifle mount like quite a bit. And I see you out training it and like just being honest with how your training is going and stuff. So I was like, you know what? This guy would be a really cool dude to have on the podcast. So
Thanks,
Tyler.
buddy.
Yeah. If you want to introduce yourself and tell us, what your training company is as well, all of that jazz.
So Tyler, the last name's Ostelhoff. You don't have to say it. Most
I
people
won't.
mess it. Most people mess it up. But yeah, so just a quick background. Did the Marine Corps thing for 4.5 years. Was a nerd more than anything. Ground intelligence officer, which was a pretty cool training pipeline, I think. But I was lucky. I got to be a scout sniper platoon commander for half of that time. I was not a scout sniper, contrary to popular belief. All of my Marines were. That's kind of where I got the itch for higher standards and dudes who love to train. Left the Marine Corps, came back to Boston to be with my then fiance, now wife. Did the VA GI Bill. Got a master's from Northeastern in Homeland Security for policing intelligence because I thought it might be useful. Because I knew I wanted to be a cop. Jury's still out whether or not it was super useful, but learned some stuff, met some cool people here in Greater Boston. Went to my first police academy in 2017, the MBTA Transit Police, which is like a regional academy. They take agencies from all across the state. But it's led and resourced by the MBTA. Left the MBTA after about 2 years, went to Northeastern University Police Department. Kind of felt like I wanted to give back because I did have a pretty good time there. They were good to me. A lot of money at a big private university, and even at universities in Boston, you'd be surprised how supportive the university, the college presidents are of their police department. So I got to do quite a bit of training, which was sweet. And then eventually, after about a year left, went to the Boston Police, where I'm at now. Been there for almost 4 years, working downtown and up in Charlestown in the anti-crime unit. I'm lucky. I've got a very good gig. I've got a great boss, great set of bosses, and some good partners. And we get to drive around in plain clothes and look for bad guys and stuff. It's pretty fun. With that said, after getting through my first academy, my buddy Andy, who started this company with me, and I realized that the shooting standards were non-existent. And anybody who's been in the profession, super new to it or been there for a long time knows that that's the case. And it bothered us. My buddy Andy was in the Army. I was in the Marine Corps. We both, did some leading and some planning of training, and we were like, this can't be it. So we started going to the range on our own shooting. And when I say on our own shooting, I meant we started just ripping the gun out of the holster as fast as we could, seeing what we could do, how fast we could do it. Started running around a little bit, got the heart rate up, and basically from scratch, just created our own set of standards, stuff that we thought cops should be able to do. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that turned into. But from there, and once we did that, we started inviting buddies out, feds, stadies, other cops, having them shoot the drills, and it turned into like these sort of ad hoc training sessions. It was like, these are pretty good drills. They're hard, but everyone felt like, yeah, we should be able to do these. If that sounds like outcome-based training, that's because that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, I think the majority of people start there.
Yes,
for the most part.
And it felt good to eventually like meet dudes who, guys in our network who also started there. It didn't, I didn't feel totally stupid because if you don't know, at least you can say, all right, I need to be better. So where do we start? And if we used some of the force science data to build some of these things, but learned, I want to say quickly, but unfortunately not as quickly as we like, that data is oftentimes misinterpreted. Best example I can say is, some of that data might suggest that the majority of shootings with officers are 1 to 5 rounds at 15 feet. So we said, okay, let's have a drill from 10 yards, which is 30 feet, double it with 5 rounds, 100% accuracy. You got to do it. And I think the standards we had at the time were like 4 seconds is the minimum and 3 seconds is the master. We had a couple different standards you could use. Looking back, it's like,
I know. I think the biggest like trouble with the force science data is like people will read that and then take it for gospel in terms of how they need to go train. So like, oh, this is what we see the most of. This is what I'm going to do, and they'll take it down to like, par times and draw times and all this stuff. And it's like, just because that says that doesn't mean that that is the best training strategy to get to that outcome that you're reading about, right? Maybe
100%.
in training you need to go a little bit faster to then reach that outcome or whatever the case may be.
Right.
So I don't know, I think people taking that as like gospel for a training strategy probably is pretty flawed.
So I couldn't agree more. And now I know it set us back because at the end of the day, if we're going to use the data to tell us how fast we need to shoot, the answer is like a half a second when it comes to like reactive engagements, which, the large majority of like, I work in patrol. I think I've got a pretty cool gig in patrol, but I work in patrol. Like I'm not proactively doing much with my gun out. So I'm concerned most about the reactive stuff. And, you're not going to outdraw a gang kid with a gun in a car or around a corner. You know what I mean? It didn't make sense.
Right.
And there's no other way to describe how we came up with these 4 second, 3 second, 2 second standards than to say we made them up. And we felt like, well, this is faster than the academies are having us do it. So, and we can do it. So that must be what the standard should be.
Well, you're getting ahead, so we should jump to that question because I already had that question down.
Yeah. See, I told you you might have to reel me in, buddy.
I'm gonna reel you in. So, you talked a little bit about your company. Before we go on to that question, tell me what you guys teach now, not what you used to teach. What do you teach now? Because that's the stuff that I think people like. Just being honest, not saying this because you're in front of me. Like people should go train with you. Like if they're in your area, they should go train with you. That's just my opinion. But like, what is it that you guys teach that kind of separates you from, the normal, like, hey, we're gonna scan the whole ass range before we put the gun away type of deal, or we're gonna shoot colors when I call them out to you, like that sort of thing.
Nice.
It's like what separates you from those guys?
So now we teach shooting, raw skill shooting, no scanning, no shouting, very little, one-handed shooting, very little change the rifle in your shoulder shooting. I am concerned, we are concerned after training with folks like you. We are concerned that the raw skill itself it needs to be higher. And there's no better way to do that than to just focus purely on the shooting part. And we're thinking about it from a performance standpoint.
So you would say that you do like performance or practical type of shooting for the most part?
Yes.
I like
Yep.
it.
And yeah, and I'll go as far as to say the standards that we once created are gone. We don't have standards anymore. We got rid of them. We still have the CASS drill, which I think is just fun. It was our way of getting people to shoot in the winter, but now it's about going up against yourself, focusing on the process, and thinking about, which we'll get to, I'm sure, a couple of key principles, and just seeing how capable you really are of being super fast and accurate.
So talking about standards, right? Everyone, it seems like every instructor has some sort of, hey, these are my standards, right? Like I used to do them a bunch in classes. I don't anymore unless someone asked me to. But like people have all of these standards, or people will train to, you know, I want to draw on this par time, or I have this type of par time. Like, should I be chasing par times? Should I be, training on these standards? Like, in other words, like if there's a specific standard, say, like take mine, for example, it starts out with a 25-yard bill drill. Like, should I be hammering on these 25-yard bill drills? Like, is this how to get better? So, like, I like what you said there. Like, you don't do standards anymore, but like, what do you think people should be doing? Like, should they be training on standards and par times? Should they be, chasing these par times and types of speed? Or is there different stuff in their training that they should be looking at in regards to, well, I don't want to lead you in my question, but
Yeah.
you get the idea.
So I'll be perfectly honest with you, bro. Like if you asked me this question 6 months ago, I think I would have said yeah. I think I would have said that this is just kind of where I am in the process as a shooter and a teacher. I would have said yeah. I would have said that that cops, that there is a standard for me, that I should be able to do something in order to hit the street, right? That Marines, when they pick up a gun, whether they're infantry or not, combat arms or not, should be able to do something. That a self-defender, even in Massachusetts, which is more friendly towards self-defenders with pistols than you might think, they should be able to do something. But just in the last 6 months, as I explored as a shooter and as a teacher, this hard focus on principles and concepts versus techniques, I don't think that should be the priority. And I think it's because when I started to focus on the process and understanding exactly how the gun was behaving in my hands and the things specifically that were making the gun behave the way it was or wasn't, I just started to become a faster, more accurate, and for me, what I think is the most important part, and for cops, a more consistent shooter. And I didn't have to think as hard about, let me get my hands to the gun, in the exact way every time. Let me make sure I get that dot up onto the wall in less than a second, chasing a sub-second draw stroke. Let me make sure I get my bill drill in 1.8. Up until 6 months ago, half of my, dry fire training was, let me get the gun out. We've talked about it before. Let me get the gun out, in 0.8 seconds because I want to be able to do it in a second. But I found myself consciously chasing, let me get it up there, press it, and if the dot's there, good. And I say to myself, okay, good, that worked. And then I'd back up and I would do it again. And if it didn't work, I would say, well, I just have to keep doing it. And I got to the point where I was pretty good at it, but in the last probably 3 or 4 months, training with dudes here who are practical shooters and a lot better than me, Angel Sanchez, who is a master class USPSA guy, and And Carry Optics, he's got a company at Granby too who hosts dudes. Been training with him a lot. And he hits these principles pretty hard. It's just become very clear to me super recently that to chase a time and to chase a standard is not the way to progress as fast as you want.
So, well, what would you say some things that maybe people overlook in their training? Because I think that kind of leads into this question. Like, people overlook stuff. So, like, that's kind of what you're talking about. They overlook things that are possibly more important, and not, maybe they just don't know what they don't know, right? So, like, what do you think some things are that people overlook in their training? uh like you just mentioned, like not chasing par times or not chasing, some sort of standard. So, like, what are some things that people should be doing in their training? Like, for me personally, I always tell people, like, I think the biggest thing people miss is actually paying like close attention to specific things and seeing what happens and then applying cause and effect.
Yes.
Like, I feel like people don't pay enough attention to what does your grip feel like? What are your eyes doing? Like, this stuff is significantly more important to me, especially like the more mature of a shooter I get, that's the stuff that I would much rather hammer on rather than like I'm just gonna set this arbitrary par time for this whatever drill.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go hammer on the black belt standards, right? So I can pass these things.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's just counterproductive. So, like,
Yeah.
what do you think? Like, what are some things that people possibly overlook in their training?
Uh, so the first one, and this is just from personal experience, is kind of what you just said, is the self-diagnosis piece, right? It's like, why am I missing? And I spent a ton of time doing that when we built those standards that I mentioned. I mean, we were out there days on end just shooting them over and over again, and we thought we knew why we were missing low left as right-handed shooters because we were smashing the trigger too hard, but we were wrong. Uh, and it
Wait,
wasn't until and it wasn't
wait, what do
until
you mean?
and it was yeah, and it wasn't until training with guys like you and I'll give Paul Costa a lot of credit from Achilles, and then dudes who other practical shooters who've come to Granby. Just trained with Dave Wampler recently, right before I shot Area 7, which was fucking awesome.
I want to train with that guy for
He's
sure.
an absolute rhino.
Yep.
I don't know how he moves the way he does, but he's an absolute beast. He's very fun to watch. Very good teacher. But yeah, and I don't know if overlook is the right word because you said it. You don't know what you don't know, right? And I didn't know. I admit fully. From the Marine Corps thing and in the even after doing 2 police academies, it's like they always say it's smashing the trigger ain't good. Well, smashing the trigger's fucking awesome. If you can isolate your finger and you can crush the gun with the other hand. And once we figured that part out, I was able to, like you said, pay attention to how the gun was behaving, whether it was the front notch or the red dot. And if the dot didn't lift from where I was looking, or if there was movement in the gun, instead of thinking about gently pressing the trigger, I could think about the things that mattered most, which typically we realized was vision and grip. So I think 100%, once you know those things, and I'm not saying trigger's not important, it is. Grip, sights, and trigger have been the fundamentals forever, and I very recently also realized that there's certainly some value to being able to isolate your trigger finger, especially as you shoot different guns. But once I realized what was making me miss, that's all I paid attention to. And I would shoot doubles. I still, I'll shoot doubles now, and I'll shoot, if I'm training with guys like Angel Sanchez, I'll be shooting mini stages, and I'm almost not almost like I'm not thinking as much about did I get my hits as I am about how did the red dot look when I pressed the gun, when I pressed the trigger. So I think without a doubt, if there's anything that dudes and gals should be doing, it's understanding why they're missing, how to self-diagnose, what to do to prevent it, and then I'm sure we'll talk a lot about this word, explore your way into getting to a point where you stop doing that thing. One of the other things I thought you just kind of had to, that you should be able to do is, if a technique is introduced, you go to a class and someone says, try this or try that. I used to be of a school of thought that there should be like an immediate result. We've talked a lot about the mount on the carbine. I think that's a great example. I mean, the amount of fucking time I have spent exploring how best to hold a rifle
Yep.
makes me want to throw up.
I think that's it's definitely a valid point. Like, people come to classes because they want to get better, and I think a lot of the time they want to get better right there.
Yes.
Which I think, hey man, you shoot 1,000 rounds in a weekend for sure.
You're gonna get better.
You're getting better by default. Are you actually gaining skill though? I think the answer is no. And I think that people kind of go into classes having the wrong mindset, right? Like, they think like, oh, I'm going to go train. Well, the classes are not training. What you do after the class is training, right? That's why I think I'm super picky with what I tell people and the drills that we do and the concepts that we go over, because that's the stuff that I want them hammering on when they leave there as homework. But yeah, you bring up a good point. Like, hey, I want to get better right now. And it's like, that probably isn't going to happen. Like, I tell guys all the time, if they say something like, yeah, I just, the way that, you showed me how to mount the rifle as an example, right? Like, it's not working. It's like, well, you've only been doing that for like 10 minutes.
Exactly.
Right. And I usually ask these guys, like, hey, the first time you were with a woman, is it the same as it is, back then, now, or have things changed? Right. For some of you guys,
It's the same.
it's the same. For some of us, things have gotten a little bit different just based on experience. So I think, actually paying attention to what is happening allows you to learn through experience. But I think kind of the bad news for people is, like, you have to go work.
Yeah.
Right.
Takes time.
You take what you did in the class and you're like, yep, all right, now I need to go home and really, really lean into this stuff. And
Yep.
it's work. And you
Yep.
have to pay attention to
Yep.
specific things.
And I've had this talk with like cops, right, who and dudes that carry guns every day who don't get to shoot every day and don't get to shoot every week.
Sure.
And I'm one of those, right? Like now I'm once or twice a month, like a deliberate day is where I'm at. And it's even so my point is it's even harder for guys like that. So it's certainly more difficult to get a cop who just wants to be proficient and be better to understand this concept of exploration and trying these things deliberately. So for somebody that might be able to shoot it once a week, it might take 2, 3, or 4 months to figure out how to grip a pistol and get the gun to behave the way they want. For a cop, it might take 6 or 7, might take a year. But at the end of the day, I still think that's better for a cop and for a dude who's carrying a pistol every day than to stick to an outcome-based thought process, because they don't know. We'll probably come back to the same thing. They don't know what they don't know until they've tried a lot of different shit.
Well, that grip thing that you mentioned, I think people can get pretty good at that pretty quickly, right? If they're paying attention to the correct things, meaning, like, maybe you shoot once a month and you have, say, 300 rounds to expend once a month. And then you take that 300 rounds, like, man, you better be very particular with what you do with those 300 rounds. So if you want to get good at grip, shooting things like group shooting, shooting doubles, paying close attention to, what the gun is doing in your hands, what is my vision doing? What is the gun doing in my hands? Am I changing pressures on the gun? Things like that. And then, you use that live fire as a way to figure out, like, okay, when it went well, what did my grip feel like? And then you take that home to your dry fire, right? Now that I know, like, or maybe I just have an idea, like, yep, I think it's supposed to feel like this. Now you dry fire, maybe you're doing transitions, whatever. You're paying close attention to your grip. Like, is my grip staying the same? Is this the grip? Is this the exact pressures that I want with each hand? Am I putting pressure in the right spots? Like, is that what I'm looking for? And I think when you start attacking training like that, like, things get good really, really quickly. Like, there's so many dudes out there, like, we've all run into them, where they just absolutely shred right? And it's like, how long have you been shooting? And they'll say something like a year and a half. Like I have one that comes to my classes out in California. I met him 2 years ago, and 2 years ago he was like, yeah, like I just hunt in my spare time. I shoot every now and then. Now the dude doesn't hunt anymore. Now all he does is like shoot matches, and the dude is an absolute monster. And
That's
it's been
amazing.
2 years. Um, and I promise you, he's not out shooting, 10,000 rounds a week.
And it depresses me. I'll be honest, because I talk about this all the time with Andy and then our other co-founder Ben. It's like, if I had known these things 10 years ago, I would have saved so much time, so much
Sure.
ammo, so much money, so much time going to classes. I spent a lot of time, and this is not a knock on SIG, but I spent a lot of time. Don't smile. I spent a lot of time up at the academy training, and it's a great facility. And they've got guys up there now like Scott Rader, grandmaster shooter, who's he's teaching
Sure.
practical shooting stuff. But I spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of ammo up there training, taking instructor classes, taking red dot classes, and there was even with all that time spent, there was never a focus on really the process. It was technique stuff. Didn't get a lot of principles based stuff, and I never even considered the value of how should I be trying to do this on my own. It was okay. I did this. I met that standard. Let me go train with Nick now. Okay, I did this. Let me go train with Dave Wampler now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it, and you don't have to be this is probably another segue, but you don't have to be a. I am of the opinion that to be good at this and to make this stuff work in academies and at military institutions, you don't necessarily have to be a competitive shooter. I think you should shoot a match or two a year to see what it's like. But for me, the coolest part about this and the stuff I take from guys like you is like these concepts are teachable to everyone, but they're just so different that the status quo of the four fundamentals and slowly press the trigger, get they're going to go off, focus on the front sight post. It's so ingrained that either people are afraid to do something differently, or I don't know if it's an ego thing. I really don't know what it is, but I don't understand why it hasn't become the thing at academies and places like that.
It's an ego thing for the most part. And
that's what you've seen.
Yeah, this is just my thoughts, right? It's an ego thing because people are very attached to the things that they teach as a marketing tool, right? Whether you're like, hey, I have a name for my grip, or whatever the case may be, and that's what I teach. It's like when that stuff gets questioned, people take that personally because that's the stuff that they use for marketing. So like for me, I don't know. I've never understood that. That's never been a thing that I wanted to bring into not only my training but my training company as well. Like, dude, I've always just wanted to like, hey, what do I need to do to get better? And I don't care who it comes from. Like, you could tell me like, hey, you should grip the rifle or mount the rifle like this, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna go try it, right?
I'm gonna
And
send you some notes on it. Send you some notes.
and like if it works for me, I will completely throw out what I used to do for
Yeah,
something that is way better now.
yeah.
But like to your point, I think people get wrapped up in like, oh, this is my thing, and like this is what I do in training, and like this is a marketing thing. So like if people question, how I talk about grip because I have a specific name to it or whatever the case may be, like I think those guys get like very defensive very quickly. And
We
those
used
are the type of guys like I am not interested in training with them in the least bit. And that's not me being a dick. It's just like I am just trying to be honest, right? I
yeah.
have zero interest in training with someone who is like, names for their transition or like I said, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Like I'm interested in like what can I do when I leave this class to get better?
Yes, on my own. We
Yes.
used to, in the spirit of honesty, we used to teach, and for the guys who've trained with us and watch this, they'll laugh. We used to teach a grip, and we used to call it the torque and wrench.
Yes.
I'm not
Perfect.
kidding. It was similar to some techniques that you've seen out there, but to be fair, we'd been doing something like it for a while, and I found some confirmation after training with some people who also did something similar. And but again, it was one of those things where, if we couldn't get a student on the line to be successful, it was, and there's posts, and I've left them up. The answer was more torque and more wrench.
Dude,
I could,
like,
we
quick
almost
side
put
note.
it on a t-shirt.
Quick side note, I appreciate that you leave that up, right? Because it shows me that it's like, this guy, like, it's like, all right, I don't care. This is what we used to do. I no longer do it. Right? Like if you deleted it, that would show me like maybe there's some, ego involved there
Yeah.
or something like that, right?
Yeah. I've hovered over it regularly to press the X. But yeah, it's and you said it, we should be a little proud, and I guess I am, because I think if the industry could use anything, it's just a little more honesty and some authenticity. But the time that we spent, and again, that was one of those things where, like, I found success in being able to not just crush the gun, but like kind of torque it down, and that made some sense to me because the muzzle wants to come up. So why don't I torque it down with my hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, stop laughing. But this was all before
Yep.
the concept of tension and what it does to performance was introduced to me.
Tell me more. Tell me more.
Well, yeah, that's where Paul Costa gets some credit. He came with Rick, and it was one of the first classes that I think Rick let him teach on his own, and it was great. He talked a lot about tension, and a guy that size, if he can show you what it looks like to relax, you kind of have to pay attention to it. Yeah, and when I realized when that concept was introduced to me, I was one of those guys that was like, this don't make any sense. This is dumb. But I tried it, and I tried to relax, and I tried to not do weird shit with my support hand. And I don't necessarily know if I saw an improvement, but nothing changed. And I'll never forget it after like a month or two of just crushing the gun. No wrench, no torque, no fucking tool.
Snap on.
I was like, okay, this might make other things that I have to do after my bill drill a little easier.
Sure.
And there, that was the door to the world of performance and not shooting like a turtle. I think I showed you that. I showed you the picture of. There was a picture of me in the Transit Police Academy where I was like this.
Oh yeah.
Did I show you that?
We're gonna talk about it. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Typically when I hear instructors talk about like, hey, grip the gun like this to make it not lift as high or control how high it goes or whatever, that to me right off the bat is a red flag. Right. And it's a red flag because that guy's gun might look flat, but I guarantee you that shit returns low left. Right. Because they're fighting the lift of the gun. And the more that I train, the more I focus on making the gun not only predictable, meaning it comes back down to the same exact spot, but like not only precise, but like as fast as possible. How fast can I return that gun precisely to the exact same spot? The flatter my gun is.
Mm-hmm.
But you focus on flat and you focus on the gun not lifting, people just end up fighting with it. And then the damn thing returns to the left. Like, cool. It looks great on IG, but like put it in slow-mo and it's fucking atrocious because the gun is bouncing on the return, meaning like it's going below the spot that they're trying to hit.
Yeah.
So like with that, you sent me some videos the other day, and it was of your training that you used to do. I think a lot of us came from that exact same place where maybe we were doing things tactical. Like I know me, like, dude, just being honest, like I've taken, vehicle classes where like I'm jumping in and out of vehicles, like I'm hiding behind pillars and whatever the case may be. I've taken classes where I'm shooting from my back because that's the stuff that I thought used to be really important to me. Um, at the time, I didn't realize like I couldn't hit shit, right? Um, but I thought like, hey, this is the stuff that is important because I want to protect myself, family, all
Mm-hmm.
of that jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So like, what is the stuff that you have changed? Maybe in your training, but more specifically in your classes, right? Because this is the stuff that in my opinion, makes guys like yourself interesting because, like we talked about before, a lot of guys, like if you said, like, hey, I don't like that shit that you do in your class, like they would take offense to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you told me that, like I'm gonna go like look at it in terms of
Mm-hmm.
like, is this the most effective way to train, or maybe I should change this or that? Like I'm constantly changing things. So like it makes guys like yourself interesting to me because that means you're always training on your own. So, like, what are some things that you used to teach and no longer teach?
uh,
As he takes a deep breath.
yeah, yeah. So let me let
We'll
me
start with
preface.
Temple Index. You no longer teach Temple Index.
Let me start by just temple indexing my phone.
Okay.
Uh, Let me preface this by saying that there is obviously efficacy to shooting from uncomfortable positions and shooting around cars. Cops do a lot of work around cars. I do a lot of work around cars. Um, so there's some efficacy to that. But what we discovered in our sort of the evolution of our thinking about this is that if you don't have the raw skill, there's no point. There's no point to get into the rollover prone and shoot through a port. If you can't do what you're about to do on that C zone steal from 20 yards on an A zone at 10, it's like what am I doing? And so those things, shooting from uncomfortable positions, shooting through barricades, how to load, cover, we used to teach that stuff. It was a part of our, so generally speaking, we've got like pistol series and then carbine series, pistol 1 to 4 and carbine 1 to 4, and then we got a concealed carry class. And the idea was you sort of progress, and carbine in pistol 4 we used to call, don't laugh, pistol operator and
Oh
carbine
man,
operator. Yeah.
dude.
And we used to include things like not shooting from inside cars because we used to use our own cars, but how to get the gun out, jump out of the car, do it safely. The gun may or may not have been up and around our head when we did those things.
That's always it. Never mind. Go ahead. I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
get.
yeah.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, long story longer, yeah, we used to do that stuff. We used to spend. It certainly wasn't the majority of the stuff that we did in those classes, but we used to spend time on it. We don't anymore because what we have discovered, what I have discovered, and I'm still I consider myself like new to the policing world, right? Like I've a couple academies, couple departments, but I've only been a cop for 7 years. But I've been through a couple academies. I've done some fun training in the Marine Corps. I didn't do anything, super cool in the Marine Corps, but I did some fun stuff. And I've gotten to see kind of the training that I think works and that doesn't work. And I'm at a point now where the reason why I think I'm here talking to you is like I've come to value more than anything, like how I should be doing this. And we just discovered that it's the raw skill that matters most. And if you can manage the muzzle while running around doing crazy stuff and keep your finger off the trigger, and you can perform on demand consistently, that when you fall down or trip or shoot behind cover, like it's not that hard. And people aren't going to like that, but it's not that hard. It obviously takes a little bit of practice, but to spend a whole day or 2 days or 5 days, stacking the pillars and shooting behind them, falling down, shooting under a car, shooting through barricades, to devote a whole class to that, I think is a waste. Is my personal opinion.
Would you say that people that go through that type of stuff, or that's how they train, they never train fast enough because they're worried about, hey, maybe their outcome, you know, based in terms of like the way that they're thinking, like, oh, when I go too fast, like the wheels kind of fall off. Like that
Yeah.
to me, like when I see that stuff, it's like you're shooting so slow. Like gunfighting is like up front. It is not my wheelhouse, right? Just outside looking in, when I see people shooting that slow, it's like, man, I would love to go up against you with a blue gun.
Yeah.
Like I'd probably tag you more than once,
You
right?
probably kill all of us. Uh, and I think the answer is yes. And that was me. I was a guy that used to watch Lucas Bodkin and think, what's the point? Kid's a nerd. I used to watch shooting competitions, practical shooters, and say, what's the point? These are nerds. I was a targets don't shoot back guy. I never thought any cop should have to do a 2-second bill drill. I never thought I needed to be able to get the gun out in less than a second. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I couldn't tell you. I mean, I'd be making up answers to say, well, why not? And go back to one of the first things we talked about. It's like if we really want to get cops to train to a reacting to a dude trying to kill you type of standard, the answer should be like a fucking 0.25-second draw stroke, which we
Yeah.
know is impossible unless you're maybe Billy Barton. But it's like I was literally at a watching competitive shooters, watching dudes like Lucas, and there's other people like Lucas who have, I'm now of the opinion are doing absolutely phenomenal things for the industry and for gun carriers. Just saying like there's no point. And I don't know why I'd be lying to you if I had any reason. So to answer your question, yeah, until someone forced me to not just outshoot my headlights, but like drive the car off a cliff and just shoot in the dark, like to see how fast I could get the gun to move, and then realize that, holy shit, there are some things I can do to make that Delta and those 4 Charlies turn into just 2 Charlies. Like I didn't know, I was at a place where I thought that was just unsafe training.
Would you say that going that fast opened up some bandwidth
Yes.
in order to like, hey, or in other words, like, hey, now I can actually think about stuff where
Yes.
I could actually see what's happening because I've like more or less become inoculated to the way it feels?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of, where I'm at now. I did a session last week with my buddy Angel, and it's a place that it's a place that I am not great at living in because I'm still stuck in 10 plus years of not slow down and get your hits, but I have to be super accountable because of my job. So I tend to use a term that you'll know well, over confirm, right? So I feel like I'm in a place where I'm constantly, someone's Angel or guys like you saying, okay, now go faster. It's like, it's almost like I get to a point where like, well, I can't because I feel like I need to get the sights to be in the A zone before I press the trigger. But like I said, I'm at a spot now. This is just sort of a recent development where it's like I'm starting to feel, I'm starting to see the benefit and understand how you can live and practice in that uncomfortable realm, so long as you're thinking about and making the improvements with your vision and your grip and your trigger control. But yeah, that was a place, even fucking 2 years ago, dude, where I was like, I don't need to shoot that fast. Cops don't need to shoot that fast. And it's like, now it's like, I might be able to shoot faster. Like I've, full disclosure, I've shot 6 matches. That's it. 4 indoor matches, 1 outdoor match, and Area 7 with Dave Wampler and Angel Sanchez. Angel Sanchez hosted him right before Area 7. And, I am not a USPSA expert by any means, but I saw the light and I saw it instantly. I was lucky. I had a buddy bring me up to SIG. I did all these matches at SIG, by the way. My buddy brought me up there for the first 4 indoor matches, and he actually worked for Phil Strader, and they kind of helped me through the process. It was super comfortable. I was obviously nervous about it, but super comfortable. They were super helpful. I saw instantly how much I sucked. I also watched some other cops who've been doing this for longer than me and how fucking insanely good they were. And I'm like, that was another one of those kind of light bulb moments where it's just like, okay, maybe there is some efficacy to this. And the answer, like you said, was just, you got to rip that gun and then do what you have to do to get the accuracy to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also one of, you say it's an ego thing, it's a marketing thing, guys, that are teaching certain things. I think for like law enforcement teachers, that's the concept that is toughest for them to overcome. This idea of, if I were to show up at an academy here in Massachusetts and say, okay, I want you to see how fast you can rip that gun. I don't really care where the rounds go. You'd see sergeants like.
Right. Well, I think they're like that because so like, well, if you look at the statistics throughout the country, right, law enforcement shootings, it's at what, 18%?
Yeah, depending on the depending on the,
right?
It's like 10 to 50%. Let's pretend it's 50. I mean, I know where you're going with it, but yeah, depending on where you look, 10 to 50%.
Right, and they're talking about hits, and hits could be anywhere. That's not just like in the chest.
Right.
That could be a finger, that could be a toe. And I think this is kind of what we chatted about earlier. Like people take that data and they're like, oh, that's the training strategy. Then we're going to teach them how to hit. And then you see people like go way slower, but it's like, yep, I'm getting my hits. But like at the end of the day, no one's going to shoot that fucking slow. Right. And I also think when you push speed and you allow people to explore that, like experiential training, like using that, like actually experiencing what does this feel like and what does it look like, I think it opens up bandwidth, right? And then you actually like you'll see the speed turn up, the hits go down, and then when they start being comfortable with it, then you see the hits go way, way up, and the hits stay there at speed. So like that's where that like training strategy thing, in my opinion, has to be like it has to be spot on, man. It can't be like, hey, we're just going to teach them to slow down and get their hits and just check that fucking box.
Yeah.
Because they're not doing people any good by doing that.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. So I mean, you've trained a lot of cops, and you've had students who show up who you're like, okay, you've not shot at speed before, right? And I'll use the bill drill as an example because it's just these. You'll get a guy show up that could maybe do a 3-second bill drill, right? 3.5-second bill drill. Maybe he's got a double retention holster. What is in your experience to get a guy like that who's maybe done the academy training, a class or two, maybe a technique-based company, but hasn't been introduced to this concept of speed and focusing on vision and getting the gun to be predictable. What's a realistic expectation to get a guy like that? A timeline, maybe a round count, a timeline. What's realistic to get a guy like that to go from, let's see how fast you can rip this gun, to, holy shit, I can do this while keeping my eyes on a small spot and maintain the same pressure in my hands.
And getting like sub 3 seconds. So maybe it goes from 3 to 2.
Discovering he can do something closer to 2, 2.5.
That depends on the dude or girl. What like how much work are they going to put in?
Yeah.
And like if that's your goal, like, hey, I want to get a sub 3-second bill drill. You have to start questioning, like, all right, what am I doing to get there? So like one thing that I would recommend, right? Like maybe we'll use the example that we used earlier. Maybe you have 300 rounds once a month, right? You need to feel what that grip is supposed to feel like in terms of pressures, right? Then when you go home and when you dry fire, I would dry fire bill drills. And I'm saying like actual bill drills at speed. Be okay with the gun not looking, or be okay with the sights not looking so great while you're doing it because of how you're pressing the trigger.
Okay.
Right? It feels uncomfortable. Now, I'm not saying go at a pace where you can't see shit, right? Go at a pace that feels uncomfortable. That uncomfortable pace this week will not be the same pace that feels uncomfortable next week.
Right.
If you're actually putting in the work and paying attention, right? And by that pace, I mean, like maybe this week you could shoot a bill at 2.5 seconds in dry fire practice, right? Like that's as fast as you can go. Like that feels really uncomfortable. Next week, it'll be 2.2, right? The week after that, maybe it'll be down to 2. And you just start getting more and more and more comfortable with that speed. It's almost like on the way home, say on the way home from work, there's a turn right by your house where you typically drive 55. But today you're like, you know what? I'm going to see what it feels like to go 70, right? The first time you do that, your hands feel like, you feel tension, you grip the shit out of the steering wheel. Maybe it feels, uncomfortable, out of control. Well, you know what? Keep at that pace every day this week. Next week, 80 probably won't feel that bad, right? But like the speed has to be there. You can't like the whole like, hey, I'm going to start off slow and taper off thing. Like that is not a viable training option.
No.
You have to go faster and then analyze what's happening at that speed.
Well, it is. It is a viable training option because it's been happening for decades. But to your point, that's not how, and you don't have to have been in a gunfight to know this. That's not how it goes. It's not how it's going to go. And the accuracy, the ratio of hits to misses, and to your point, it's going to be even worse. You're right.
Well, it's like, the
it's just not how it works.
Use law enforcement as an example. The first time that they go fast should not be in a gunfight.
No.
It should be on the range, right, where they're used to, or in a more controlled environment where it's like, hey, I'm just going to go fast, right, and see what this feels like. And the thing about that is, and there's interesting talks about this lately online that I'm seeing because like there's a retired Delta dude talking about this, how like when people go fast, it's really dangerous because they outrun their headlights and such. And it's like, I completely fucking disagree. And I disagree because if all you do is like go slow, when you do have to go fast, it completely sucks, right? But the guy who goes really fast, right, explores speed, completely understands it. Like, take me, for example, like I've got, if we want to like nerd out about split times, like I can shoot 15, 16 splits on tap, right? If I need to shoot a 25, it feels very fucking slow to me, right? It's easy to back off of the gas. It's harder to press the fucking gas and stay in control. So like that's where like that training strategy, in my opinion, needs to be like, hey, I'm going to train at an uncomfortable pace like pretty damn often.
Yes.
Like that's where the vast majority of the training needs to be spent.
Yes. Yeah. And I got two questions for you, but I want to back up to one. You talked about how, and I want to make sure I want to make sure that I'm articulating what I think the answer is and giving the right advice. But would you agree that there is some time that, if the world of performance and these concepts are new, that until you know what right looks and feels like, until you know what it's like to have your eyes stay on a small spot on the target. I know we haven't talked about these principles yet. Probably a good segue. But until you know what that looks and feels like, and probably more importantly and most importantly, until you know what your hands should feel like around the gun or mounted on the rifle, that there is some time that should be spent, that needs to be spent live on the range before you can start to really work on those things in dry fire. The reason I ask is, in my experience, I wasted a lot of time dry firing because I either wasn't gripping the gun hard enough or wasn't maintaining the grip pressures. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, no, I think time definitely needs to be spent. And that, like maybe you're shooting group shooting, maybe you're doing doubles, whatever, and you're just paying attention to, what the gun is doing when you put different pressures in different places, right? From there, like pay attention to like, hey, maybe on, maybe you have 300 rounds. To use that same exact example. Maybe when I got up to like 200 rounds, things started going really good. Well, take note of what that looks like and feels like, right? Because that is going to drive the dry fire piece when you get home. right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to take note of what that looks like, feels like. I'm going to dry fire it, and I'm going to try to more or less like onboard that information so it sticks in my head. And this way, when I go out and live fire, like I have realistic expectations, and I also understand like what things are supposed to look and feel like. That's where like when dudes are like, "Oh, you can't dry fire a grip," man, I disagree. I completely disagree.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Like that's like if you go out and live fire and you have an idea of what your grip should feel like, well, when you dry fire, you should have the exact same type of grip. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I tell dudes like, hey man, if you're dry firing for an hour, you're wrong. I can't grip the gun like straight like that for an hour,
I
right?
completely agree.
My hands will be completely wrecked if I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually gripping the gun like I do in live fire. If
Mm-hmm.
I do that straight for an hour, can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, because I mean, I'll spend time now where sometimes I'll just hold the gun for 10 seconds and think about what my fingers feel like. And there have been times where I'm like, is this beneficial? I think it is. That's why I asked.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's not something, when you hear people say you got to dry fire, go dry fire. I mean, there's so many elements to that.
Well,
Never in a
yeah.
million years would I have thought that's a beneficial exercise.
Well, people don't know what to do in dry fire,
Right.
right? And that's why I think like a class that is a principle-based class showing people how to train is the most bang for their buck. This way they can go home and they actually know what to do, not only in their live fire, but in their dry fire as well. Like one thing I tell people at the end of a class, like, hey, if I came up to you and was like, hey, do you notice this about your grip? Right. And I said that maybe twice. Well, you need to take note of that. And like, that's the shit that you should be leaning into really heavy. But like, if it's grip, take grip, for example, like maybe in dry fire, you draw the gun really aggressively, get the gun on the target, and then like, look at your grip. Like, is this where I want my hands? Is this how my grip should feel? Or like on the way out of the holster, is my grip like doing weird shit? Did I set my grip after I saw the dot? Or am I setting the grip early like I should be? Things like that, like key to pay attention to. And like one thing that I think I try to impress upon people at least is like in classes, like if you can think about that stuff, it's like the road to get better is so much shorter than it would be if you were just like going through the motions.
Yeah, it was like this is obviously not the case, but it almost felt like it was. I mean, the best aha moment I've ever had was when I know we were going to talk about some principles as far as grip and vision are concerned, but when I discovered the power of my fucking eyeballs
Yes.
and
So, well, what would you say, right? Like if a student asked you, what is visual aggression? I'm not sure if you say like those words specifically, visual aggression. That's typically the way that I like to go over it, but like you get the idea, yeah.
yeah,
So like what does it look like and feel like to be visually aggressive? And like how do your eyes play into not only accuracy but like everything in regards to shooting?
yeah, and I got this. I mean, I literally got this from you, and it's been confirmed by other practical shooters, competitive shooters. By the way, we didn't meet for the first time in Granby, so I'll just go fuck myself. I met you at ORD in 2023, but that's fine.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Yeah, okay, you do. Uh, the idea of and I might, yeah, I'm not gonna. I mean, disagree with like the connotation of this might be the wrong word, but
Mhm.
I was first when I was deep into force science research like an ostrich, just taking everything for the way it was coming out, I discovered the research that Joan Vickers did on quiet eye theory. And it was essentially that Joan Vickers confirmed, and it's been confirmed in practice across all sports, all big sports teams have vision coaches for a reason, and obviously competitive shooters have proven this in practice. That if you can quiet eyes, if you can quiet your eyes down on the thing you're trying to affect, either with your body or the tool in your hand, if you quiet your eyes down and fixate them on the thing you're trying to affect, immediately before, during, and after the thing you're doing, the accuracy, your ability to affect that thing with precision considerably increases. I mean, pick any sport. Focusing on a specific spot on the rim, focusing on a specific spot on a soccer goal, a hockey, whatever it is, baseball.
I agree. So real quick, so like my daughter plays golf, right? And I've heard the instructor tell her, like, keep your eye on the ball. Like, I don't tell her that. Like, I tell her, like, see where it says Titleist? Look at the freaking T on the ball.
Of course you would.
Not the whole word. Look at just the T, and it always goes so much better.
Yeah. So that, right? And this just goes to show the power of of the importance of having somebody, an instructor who gets this, help guide you into knowing what this looks and feels like, right? Because I read that research years ago, and I was like, okay, this is why this is why you look through the glass and you have to be target focused. But I never really knew what it was like to pick a piece of brown on a target, or pick any target, to try to get my eyes to lock in to the point where I feel like I'm almost making up fucking colors on the target. Like, I didn't know what that was like until someone was like, I'll give Sam Callahan a lot of credit. Sam was like, you need to just like walk around to the targets and with your finger, like, point to the spot you're going to look at. And if you can't discern the color from the rest, you have to pretend like there's something there. And I was like, that's fucking stupid. And then I did it, and I was like, I'm a loser. Like that. So again, it's one thing to like see the data, to see the research, like, and I speak about the research that Joan Vickers does because James said this 2 podcasts ago with you. Departments, the agencies, they love data. They like to be liable. They like the idea of accountability, and they like data. I thought that was a brilliant statement from him. So you take this research from Joan Vickers and prove it, and you show that it's been proven in practice. The scenarios that she did, by the way, she took a bunch of cops and they ran in a room and they had to make a decision and shoot. And the ones that looked on their front sight versus looking at something down range did considerably worse. But when I had somebody show me what that is like, and then make sure I'm doing it and ask me every time if I was doing it, it wasn't until then that I took that information that I'd been aware of for years. But it wasn't until Sam like showed me what that should look and feel like that I was like, holy shit. Like, I was, stacking rounds through transitions in a way that I used to watch Max Michel do and think that's some nerd shit that cops don't have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that the visual piece needs to be trained? Like, is that something that you're doing all the time? Trying to make sure that it's good, it's never good enough. Like an example of this for me is grip. Like, my grip is never good enough. Like that's constantly stuff that, I'm trying to hone and get perfect. Like, would you say that like the visual piece of shooting is the exact same, or like, hey, do you just get it one day?
No. And I, again, being a dumb Marine cop, used to think, well, let me keep doing this until I get my eyes to stay on that black pasty. And then I watched Ben Stager say that there are people who say they can do it and suck, and then people who say it's a constant battle. And typically those people who say it's a constant battle get pretty fucking good, and they tend to be the better teachers too, or something to that effect.
I fully agree. Like, yeah, I've shot with people that are like, yep, I'm target focused all the time. Like, it's I know people say this or whatever, but it's not a problem for me. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, you just missed steel. What do you like? Do you think it was? I don't know.
Yeah. No. Anyway. I completely agree. And it's never ending battle. If the best shooters in the world, if guys like you are saying it's a constant battle, then I mean, that's all I need to know. If someone says, yeah, I was looking, no, you weren't, and that's fine. But to go back to the importance of the purpose of this podcast and what you're talking about and the kind of training that you do, it's like, I just want to be able to know when my eyes come off the pasty, they come off the small spot, and they catch the dot. I want to know. I have to be able to say, yeah, my eyes caught it. And when I smashed that third, fourth, fifth shot, when I smashed that first shot off the second transition, I saw where it lifted from, and I know it's because my eyes caught it. Right? Like, if you can do that, it's like a fucking superpower. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's the for me anyway, and what it seems like the people that that we that we fuck with, it's a superpower, and if you can do it, you're so far ahead of as a cop, you're so far ahead of the rest of the kind of the police training, the military training world, and you can start to do stuff on your own. You don't need to go take a class, and once you get to the point where it's like, yep, for me it was like, yep, my eyes caught the dot on the second and third shot of the bill or from this transition. Now I can go back, and when I shoot the drill again, I'm not just shooting the drill to see if I can meet the time. I'm shooting the drill with one thing in mind, and it's to keep my eyes. Let me see if I can keep my eyes on that pasty for just a little bit longer. And if I can do it, and I can call my shots, that's progress. Maybe I don't get the time. Maybe I still don't get the accuracy standard I would like. But if I can do it, I can tell myself like, yeah, that's exactly why I'm missing.
Would you say occluding the dot has helped?
Yes.
So, like,
Yes.
how often do you occlude your dot?
When I feel like I'm getting now. So in the beginning, I did it for like a whole year. I just because I wanted to see, what that was all about.
Pun intended.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it was awesome. Now I'll just do it if I feel like my eyes are getting lazy.
Yeah.
I think the
I do the
last
same.
training session I did with Angel, I occluded it because I hadn't shot in a while, and yeah, I think it helps. I think it helps tremendously. I am a cross-body shooter, so right-handed, left eye, and it's helped me tremendously stay focused on a small spot.
I like it. I typically tell people like, hey, it's not going to force you to be target focused, but it will make it more apparent when you become not target focused. So like to me, I like training where I feel like maybe I'm weird. If I feel like I'm being punished, like instant feedback,
You are
like
weird, but go ahead.
like nope, now you're being punished. Like it's like that's kind of what I like because it happens fast and I learn from it and I don't like the feeling of that. And so like occluding the dot for me was a really good thing too. Like I kept mine occluded for about 6-7 months. And then when I pulled the tape off the glass, I looked and I was like, oh, still looks like it's occluded. Like my eyes are now out in front of the gun instead of being on the dot itself. Now that I know what that like is supposed to look like and feel like you say, like when I feel my eyes getting lazy, I'll just occlude it and then just go back.
Yeah,
So I go
super.
back and forth. I do the exact same. When you say dry fire or live fire, what do your training sessions look like these days? What are you focused on?
um, so now this year, it's vision. It's multiple targets and a quick thing on multiple targets because it's a pet peeve of mine. Uh, Cops and military people, like we like to think of, and I used to put this in the description of our courses. It was like multiple targets. It's like we used to think of them as multiple bad guys.
Yeah.
It's like if I'm driving through the city of Boston and having to prepare for multiple bad guys, like there's the world's gone to shit. Like we need the National Guard and we're fucked. But I have, again, in the last 18 months or so, come to realize that the idea of multiple targets, target transitions, it's a vision exercise, right? So I am now in my dry fire and live fire, I'm working my eyes. I feel like I'm at a point where, not all the time through long duration shot strings necessarily, but I'm at a point where like I know what my grip should feel like. I know what it's like when it's doing what it's supposed to do. And I know what it feels like when my eyes have caught a smaller spot on brown or steel or whatever.
Hmm.
But now I'm at a point where it's like, okay, I want to start to push my eyes because, to your point, I don't think I've even come close to realizing uh, how fast I'm able to move the gun with
So
with just my eyeballs.
so
And I'm
sat
still because I'm constantly fighting again, and this is 10 plus years of shooting slow. I'm constantly fighting the urge to over confirm.
mhm. So side note to those transition things that you were talking about, how you think about like, oh, multiple bad guys and it's whatever. And I've heard like cops say very similar things. I've heard them say like, you got to like shoot one, then follow it to the ground and shoot the other one. Like if we're talking about isolating skills, here's maybe a different take that doesn't get said a whole lot. Target transitions, it's the same exact thing applies to shooting a mover, at least for me, right? I'm gonna like say a swinger. I'm gonna look to one spot. I'm gonna trap it right there, and I'm gonna shoot it. Then I'm gonna look to another spot, trap it right there, and then I'm gonna shoot it.
Mm-hmm.
So like target transitions to me, like that translates to shooting stuff on the move or shooting movers if you're doing the visual piece correctly, right? And that whole like, oh, I need to follow them to the like that will happen if you're
Mm-hmm.
actually target focused.
Yeah. Yeah. That's verbatim what Womp said in his 2-day class. Verbatim.
All right. Well, if that guy's saying it, I must be on the right track.
You're on some kind of track. Yeah. Yeah.
What else? What else are you working on in your training? The visual piece for sure. That never ends.
Yeah.
What are some goals or maybe some things that you're looking to get out of, I don't know, say next year?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to put this out there because then there's going to be pressure, but I would like to shoot. I would like to. I'm a B class guy now, and I like goals, and I think it's not beyond the realm of possible that I make my way into the master realm if I keep doing the things that I'm doing. So I've set that goal for me. And I'm working with like this Angel's gonna have to pay me, but I'm working with him monthly at least on my movement because I have shitty hips. I had one hip surgery once. I got no cartilage left in that one and very little left in the other one. And the way that I was taught to move and shoot was like a refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm working on, after the vision thing, just trying to get as efficient as I can with my feet and my hips and moving around. So I would like to see if I can smash my way into a higher class, and may be taking a break, me personally, from doing some teaching because I've found that this world of practicality is pretty fun.
I like it. You definitely added the pressure now, sir. You said that you were going to do that on a podcast, and now people are going to go look you up on Practice Score because that's what they do to instructors.
Oh, look.
It's funny, like, I knew signing up, take for instance, I knew signing up for nationals. I'm like, people are going to look at your shit. That adds pressure, right?
Me and Joe Assad were like this.
I know some dudes 100% were, right?
Oh, he had a bad stage. He's going to be pissed.
Yeah, for sure. So like, no, I actually think that's good, right? The adding of the pressure thing, like that's
I
good.
agree.
Because then it gives you opportunity to figure out how to deal with it.
Yes. Well, and we talked about this briefly, but I think I'm it's a risk to put yourself out there.
Sure.
You
That's why
take
some
on a lot
dudes
of
don't do it.
Some people don't do it. Some people don't like to say their names. Some people don't like to say where they work. Some people I don't believe I'm violating any work policies. If I am, I'll deal with it. But if people got to know who you are, people got to know who you are, what you do for work, what you've done, and I think it's one thing to like be honest about your capabilities, but I think it's another thing to say like this is what I'm doing, this is what I've done. So yeah, Practice Score's sweet for that reason. Like I said, I ain't gonna hide. I'm not gonna hide anything. And if in 6 months I haven't shot a single match, yeah, don't delete the podcast, but you can at least keep it and then go back and say, man, I'm not fucking talking to this dipshit anymore.
No. No, Practice Score is definitely a useful tool. Funny, I had another instructor contact one of my friends. He's like, "Oh, Nick shot a really crappy match. He shot 60%." It was like a match where the firing or the tip of the striker broke in one of my PDPs. So I like left after like the third match. But I thought it was funny.
You should have just been shooting a Glock, probably.
Probably Glock perfection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Until you change something in the trigger housing, whatever. But I was like, well, practice score works both ways. So like his last match, he placed 50th out of 60. I was like, good for him. glad you're spending your time looking up me on practice score, my dude.
Yeah.
Maybe you should go dry fire or live fire.
Yep.
But
Yep. Let me ask
yeah.
you a question.
Yep.
When are you gonna be a GM?
Be a GM. So the thing about that is like you have to shoot matches, right? Like almost every weekend I am gone. So every weekend this month I was gone. Like last weekend I was in Utah. This coming weekend I'm going to be in Texas. The following weekend I'm going to be in Tucson. And then the weekend after that, Ben and Joel are coming. The following weekend after that, Joel and I are teaching a class. So it's like, dude, I just have to get to a match. And the other thing about it too is like I only have like I'm at 94.6%. Like it's almost there, right? It is not outside of the realm of me going to one match and making G. But I just have to shoot more matches. Like I have to find time to go shoot more matches. There's one locally that they do on Wednesday nights, which I most certainly could go do. But it's an indoor, like I don't know. I guess I could go do that, but I mean it's certainly a goal of mine, but I also don't want to be the GM who is getting beat by A class guys. So like one of the things that I think has started to change for me, like when I first started shooting USPSA, I was like, hey, I want to be a GM. That's the goal. As I've gotten more and more like a mature shooter and like shot more matches, especially like shooting at a national level, shooting nationals, I've realized like it's not so much about making G. Like you could be G and be like dead last at nationals, right? That doesn't. Now, I'm not saying that the guys at the top aren't GMs. They are
Right.
usually always GMs, but you don't want to be the GM that's getting clapped by A class guys. So like there's an aspect to this too where you're not just making GM, you're also trying to become a better competitor. And that has kind of been more of my focus, especially after nationals. Like I'm trying to figure out the competitor piece of it because
Mhm.
shooting a good clean match isn't just about being a good shooter. It's about knowing the game and being a very good competitor as well. And
Interesting.
if you're not a good competitor, like you're probably not going to be at the top.
Oh, that's
Like
interesting.
there's a big aspect to it where I I, I hesitate to say that it's not about good shooting because it is, but you have to know some things about like how to compete, right?
Yeah.
A good example of this is maybe there's like a stage that has 10 targets on it, right? And they're all open, all super close. Well, if you're hunting alphas on that, that's probably not a great idea, right? Because dudes are going to freaking
Burn.
hose that stage
Yeah.
and their hit factor is going to be higher than yours. Or maybe there's a field course where it's 32 rounds, right? And there's super far partials. There's, mini poppers at 30 yards, things like that. Alphas matter a lot on those type of things. If it is a weekend match, just a local 1 day match, speed probably is a little bit more important than if you go to say nationals.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is like if it's a 3 day match, you should probably be trying to shoot 90% of the points on each stage or
Interesting.
higher,
Interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Because it's a turtle race, it's not a rabbit race. So there's so much stuff in terms of like being a good competitor that for me is taking the forefront rather than like,
The shooting.
yeah, I just want to go make G. I just
No,
want
I buy
like
that. Yeah, I
I'm at
get.
94.6%. Like,
Yeah. So I'll be honest, dude. Like the reason I asked is, so I was talking about this last night with my work partner who does a lot of shooting. He'll be there. I don't think he took a class. I think he was going to take the class with you this year, but he couldn't make it. But he'll
well,
be there next year.
it changed dates. So
Oh yeah, that's right.
yeah.
But I was having this conversation with him. It's like I know because you tell me you've been on the cusp forever, but you're also booked almost every weekend next year.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean you you are a guy, and this is what I can appreciate about you is, I mean, you were a guy who was so process focused that, this the concept of outcome based stuff just doesn't concern you anymore. To include, this
Classifiers.
classify, yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly.
The other thing that plays into this, this might be kind of a long-winded story, but like if you go to shoot a classifier and you're like for my example, right? I need one. Like if I shot, I think I did the math a couple months ago. I think if I shot like a 92 or something, I'd get bumped to G. If I go to a match, right? Say it's a 1-day match, it's a local match. It has 7 stages, one of them is a classifier. That classifier is points for the match. So if I just like try to throw shit up against the wall and see what fucking sticks, and I shit the bed on a class, maybe I hook up, maybe I don't. So maybe I made GM on that classifier, but maybe I really don't. Maybe I zeroed it. Dude, that's really shitty points for the match. So like what I've been trying to do lately, and this is something that I shot a match with Matt Pranka one time, and we squatted together. If he hears this, he'll probably laugh. But like we squatted together. I like tried to throw shit up against the wall. I think it was Madness. Where like I think there's 7 targets in Madness with a bunch of no shoots. 1 shot on each, reload, 1 shot on each. And like I thought I saw out of the corner of my eye right before the reload, I thought I saw myself kind of stick the perf of a Noe. And
Oh,
I was like, well, I'm gonna make it not count. And I plugged the no shoot intentionally. And afterwards he was like, you just lost like 60 match points because you did that stupid shit. And I'm like, you know what? He's he's 100% correct on that. Like I need to stop trying to just like throw shit up against the wall because I'm trying so hard just to make G. Like no,
interesting.
shoot
Yeah,
shoot good like I want to win the match.
yeah.
I
That's a
want to win the
huge
match.
self-assessment point, buddy. I mean, people aren't thinking that way. I mean, this is what why we'd like to have you out of Granby every year. It's like this is the stuff that matters. The process, truly process focused. You got a little greedy.
I got greedy.
Got greedy. I'll
Yes.
send you some notes. Don't worry, I'll send you some notes.
Hey, I'll probably read them and check them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like not being so, oh my gosh, I have to make it, right? Um, I think that's just bad. It will happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'm close enough. It'll happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it'll happen organically.
Yeah.
It'll happen organically when I'm like, I need to stick all the points on this classifier because I'm trying to do good at this freaking match. Not because I'm like, let's just see if it sticks. Let's see it.
Yep.
Let's just like crank up the speed. Hopefully I plug all the alphas. Like that's not how I want to make G,
Right.
right? Um, I also think too, like I actually kind of like that I've been in this place for let's see, going on 2 years. I think I've had the same percent. And I like that because I think if I made G really soon, the grind may have slowed down a little bit.
Ah, interesting.
So for me, I kind of like being in a place where like I have to go out and check, like I have to go out, or at least I feel like, since I have that like last, little hurdle there to get over,
Yeah.
I need to go out and grind. Now I am fully aware of like as soon as I make it, right, the grind just gets harder. It doesn't fucking get easy. Like I think people think like, oh yeah, the better you get, the easier it is. Like no, it just gets harder.
Hmm.
Like the better I've gotten, the harder it gets, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm at 94.6%. I don't want to be the guy placing 20th at a local.
Yeah.
Like no, I want to be at least top 5,
Yeah.
right? So like doing that and doing that consistently takes constant work.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great attitude, dude. And that's I think that's in any industry, in any sport. I think I can see how that keeps you motivated to be a teacher too, to maintain the motivation, to maintain the energy, to get dudes to focus on the stuff that you are personally focused on. Because I think if and I'm sure there are people out there. I still like to think I'm newer to the industry, but and you know what? In fact, I know that there are people out there. There was, yeah, I know there are people who teach
You could
who are
say
DMs
names. It's okay.
who just kind of punt it. And had some buddies recently take a class with one of these people, and it was just like disappointing. It was, and these are dudes who like A class, M class, like want to be really good. They want to, and it's like and again, I'm a nobody, but in any industry, in any sport, it's like you train with a dude, like you want that dude to be fucking fired up. Like you want that dude to be fired up, motivated, and you want that dude to be able to offer you some things to take away, even if it's one or two nuggets. But you have to give everybody something to take away.
Dude, what? Sorry to interrupt, but like it brings up, I think, a solid point, and I've been told this by two instructors in the industry, the industry in air quotes. You should just go shoot a classifier match to make G, because you're doing it for like business purposes, right? And I'm like, as soon as I get told that, deep down inside, I'm like, we're no longer fucking friends. Like, get the hell out of my face with that crap, man. Like, I'm not doing this for a freaking business purpose. I'm doing this because I want to get, like, this is genuine. Like, I actually want to get better.
If you were doing it for business purposes, it would be pretty easy to tell pretty quickly.
Sure, I'll hop on a plane, go shoot a classifier match, and make it. But it's like, that's not how I want to do it.
No.
It's not for business purposes, right?
Yeah.
Because again, like, you don't want to be the dude that say you made M 7 years ago, and now you're 50th at a freaking local. Like, dude, you actually completely suck, right? And it's quite obvious that you made M just for a business purpose.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the instructor I want to be.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, buddy.
So.
Well, good. So go shoot your classifier.
Probably not. But dude, this was good. I appreciate you coming on. And like I say, it's always good talking to you. You know, we always chat in DMs. It always goes to like training stuff, like what are you doing in your training? You know, what should I be looking at? Things like that. And again, like, that's what interests me about you, and that's kind of the reason why I wanted to have you on. So in the end here, you should definitely plug your business, what you have going on, what classes you have coming up. And I will also say, people that are listening to this should DM Tyler here and tell him that he should still be an instructor next year instead of not, because we need more good instructors. So, and I fully believe that you're one of them.
If my wife had heard that you would have seen the computer slam shut. Yeah. So yeah, first of all, buddy, I appreciate you being a good dude, being a friend, and having me on. This was fun. Hopefully I didn't piss too many people off.
No, it's good because it makes people think. I often like that.
And I would like to think that the folks who I do communicate with and who I consider friends and some even mentors, that folks hear it, and it's like it's honestly, I think about it almost like the world of politics now. It's like, why can't we just disagree but still like shoot together? You know what I'm saying? Like, why can't we just have a different opinion but still be all right? So hopefully we're all right. But thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. Anytime.
The company, so I'm not sure what we're doing. I'm not sure what we're doing next year, but we are leaning, and this was based somewhat off a conversation that we had. We're leaning towards potentially bringing some other dudes on, dudes who happen to be better shooters than me and who've been teaching for longer than me, but who are also cops and teachers in the cop world, in an effort to try to maybe make an influence faster, than we're able to right now, as far as like standards and stuff like that. Hopefully in the next 45 days or so, we'll drop a schedule for next year. What we got going on, and have some of the people on board who I think are coming on. So all I can say is, give me a minute.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll have something. I'm just not sure what it is yet.
Well, you have classes coming up this year too, right? You still have a couple left?
Done. We're done this year. Yep, we finished with the pistol capstone, the thing that we used to call the assessment, and where we used to run all these standards that had different time and accuracy components, that has now just turned into basically 5, 6 this year. The capstone stuff, honestly, what we're most proud of. The capstone is now 6 performance metrics a day of training, and then 6 performance metrics, the same performance metrics at the end. And it is obviously to see that you got better, but it is also to see if you think differently about how you're shooting at the end based on when you shot those metrics at the beginning of training. So we just did that. We just finished up with that in September. We'll have another one, a pistol capstone, and then hopefully a carbine capstone again next year. Same idea, same concept.
Super cool. Well, I'm gonna plug myself because that's how I pay the bills.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you to confirm when you are coming out here next.
I am coming there. My schedule is so crazy I forgot the dates, but I believe it's the beginning of September of 2025 for a 3-day class, Granby, Massachusetts. Friday and Saturday Friday, Saturday we're doing a pistol rifle, and then Sunday we are doing the dynamic pistol applications class, which I am super excited about for 2025. The dynamic pistol applications class is all about transitions and movement. So I hesitate to call it a gamer class, and I hesitate to say that it's in a quote unquote advanced class, but we will be doing things that are more advanced than just standing on a line and looking at marksmanship and stuff. So that class, a lot of movement, a lot of transitions. I'm actually going to try to get at least 3 to 4 videos from each person that's in the class, throw it up on Coach's Eye, and then email them some videos and try to give them like a plan, like a customized plan from there, like where they can go in their own trainings, maybe some things to lean into. So that class I'm super fucking excited about. So that one's going to be in Granby, Massachusetts. If you're not in Granby, you should look on my website because I am pretty much all over the place. Sign up for a class. That website is www.veloxtraininggroup.com. All right. I'm done paying the bills there. Tyler, this was good.
See you, buddy. Thank you.